Oh, man. Nathan, good to see you. Let's start with some of these surprise cuts. Drew, does it get any more surprising than Alex Leatherwood out in what is now Vegas and not Oakland, like I was about to say? See, I'm getting better. We're growing as people on the show.
It's surprising that a first-round draft pick in the offensive line is 2 years into the NFL and being cut in his third year. Yeah. I don't care, well, hold on. There are bad picks, and maybe this was a reach at Leatherwood at being a first-rounder 2 years ago, but why not stick him around? Why not move him around your offense? Why not wait to find that spot that works perfect for him? I mean, but of course, we talked about this last week with Josh McDaniels and his somewhat
proclivity is a great word to use. His proclivity to get rid of people right away.
Yeah, just clipping and shaving away players from the organization that he usually had coaches. It is interesting. He's going to be picked up. That's just the best way to put it.
Yes.
Any team that's looking for an offensive lineman, this is a place to look.
And if you haven't been paying close attention to offensive line play around the league, we don't blame you for that. It's usually not one of the highlights of the game. But Alex Leatherwood was drafted as a tackle and shifted almost immediately into play guard for them after things didn't work out quite as they expected when they took him. And then since then, they have basically he struggled all the way through. And now the reports are out that they've been trying to trade him, and supposedly they got 31 no's. Could not trade him even for conditional picks. Instead have decided and had to resort to cutting him. You say there's going to be a quick landing spot for him here, Drew. Do you see a starting opportunity here, or is this going to be somebody's picking him up to be my 6th, 7th, 8th offensive lineman, you think?
Well, Travis says probably the Browns is going to pick up Leatherwood. Jonathan, good to see you as well. He says the Eagles just got better. Yeah, I think there's plenty of teams out there that could pick him up. I mean, we talked about it before the game, and I don't want to steer thunder, but maybe it's the Titans. Maybe the Titans pick him up.
That has been the story, is the question marks in the offensive line. It would not surprise me to see the Titans go out and try to bring in like 3 or 4 guys just to see what sticks and who's going to actually play at left guard. I don't really see him playing right tackle like the question mark is, but you never know. They're already making moves, kind of like Jonathan says. The Eagles also making moves. They've got better today. We're going to talk about them in just a bit here. I don't see the Eagles as a potential landing spot because that offensive line's already so strong. But one thing that keeps an offensive line strong is continuing to add to it regardless of where you're at. Do you think an offensive line like someone like the Eagles that has a pretty solid core in place, do you see them going out and reaching for someone like Leatherwood here, or do you think he's going to go to someone that desperately needs an upgrade?
Oh, yeah, why would you not want your backup to be a first-round talent? Regardless if you thought he should go in the first round or not, he went in the first round. He had, I think it was Alabama that he came from. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are right.
And I mean, so he has the coaching background behind him to put him in a position that if they need somebody, why not bring in Leatherwood? I think the Eagles would be crazy. I think any team would be crazy not to bring someone like that. And I think the Raiders are crazy to let him go. You don't have to start this guy if you feel like there's somebody better.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder if there's character concerns. It makes you wonder if it's one of those expectations of he's expected to be the starter and you kind of worry about once you put him on the bench what he's going to affect the rest of the team. I don't know, Drew. I look at this and it is surprising, but it seems to fit Josh McDaniel's style of like it's my way or the highway, kind of like all these former Patriot coaches. And unless your name's Bill Belichick, it doesn't historically work out very well for these coaches. We're kind of seeing a rerun of Denver all over again. I don't want to be too critical. I don't want to jump the shark and be like, oh, Josh McDaniels, we're already watching him fail because he's got rid of Kenyon Drake and Alex Leatherwood. But it is strange to see all these trades, all these cuts ahead of time. He does not seem to be afraid to get rid of anybody out there in Vegas.
Yeah, maybe someone that follows the Raiders a little bit more closer than what we do has more information of that. But as far as I know, it's just a cut.
It is just a release out of Leatherwood. Yep, he's just gone. Anthony goes on before his comment disappeared in front of me to say that people will always wait until you release somebody. It's cheaper. We're actually seeing a change of that. There have been a number of trades today that it was almost like the first trade deadline where everyone was pulling the trigger right before everyone was going to be cut. Something very new to the NFL. Usually teams have been much more conservative, kind of like you're talking about, Anthony, where, well, we'll just wait till he gets cut and we'll pick him up then. Now teams are jumping the gun and saying, he might not fall to me in the waiver wire and I need an upgrade at this position. Let me go ship a conditional 7th round pick out there, or we'll swap 6th and 7th like 2 years from now. Who cares? I might not be the GM at that point. Teams are taking a much more aggressive stance at bringing in a lot of these guys to try to improve at this cut deadline, which is something we have not seen. So that's very new, very interesting. We're going to talk about those guys here in just a few minutes, at least some of the important ones. There have been a bunch of them that have come through. We're only going to touch on the high notes, I think.
Right. Justin, good to see you. He says you could take the Raiders out of Oakland, but you can't take the Oakland out of them.
Just cut everybody, baby.
Yeah, there you go. There's a new logo.
And we will talk about the DB. I know, Jonathan, you were talking about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being one of those guys that was traded for at the deadline. He was probably the marquee trade. We'll talk about him, I promise, as soon as we get to the trades. But first, let's talk about guys that surprisingly got cut. Another name, Drew. Interesting. I didn't expect it. Maybe not a household name, but if you've followed the Colts here lately, you'll know Marlon Mack has had some success before he got hurt the past couple of years, and then kind of mysteriously, the Colts just moved on from him, and everyone was like, that was, at least I was like, that was kind of weird. And I thought for sure he was going to go somewhere else and really be able to help a team. But now Houston, not known for having a whole lot of talent on that roster, Drew, they're moving on from Marlon Mack as well. I was shocked by this, even though it's not necessarily a highlight name. Marlon Mack moving on from what's seemingly an underpowered running back room. Kind of an interesting move here at the deadline.
Yeah. Anytime you think about a veteran being cut from one of the worst teams in the league, especially in a position that usually has depth in the roster that they could use a veteran presence in, it's definitely a question mark on Marlon Mack. I mean, during his time with Indianapolis, I mean, he was considered a decent back. I mean, I remember a lot of people picking him up in fantasy and hoping for that, that third round or that third running back on your roster spot. Now he's a free agent. I don't think it's going to take long. I think he's going to find a place to play, and who knows? I mean, running backs and the way they get injured this day and age, you need them.
Yeah, and I still think he's a guy that as a third down back can help a lot of teams. So I'm with you. I think he'll probably find that role somewhere. He won't be a bell cow. He won't be a guy that gets a ton of touches, but he's that guy when it's 3rd and 8 and you send all the receivers deep and nobody's open, you drop it off to him and hope he beats the linebacker. More often than not, he was that guy. So either he has been injured to the point where there is just nothing left in the tank, or he's somebody that watch your team if you need that extra kind of punch on 3rd down. I feel like he is that guy that can really be your spell back to come in and make things happen. I won't say Jamal Charles-esque because he's not that talent. He doesn't have that level of talent, but that type of player that that you can drop him the ball and let him make moves after he makes the catch.
And he's got great hands too. He definitely does. Nathan says, "You hear that Baker Mayfield said he's going to F up the Browns."
He might. And here's why. Him versus Jacoby Brissett, I think they have the edge already. You're going to have a motivated, revenge tour Baker Mayfield. It's week 1, too, isn't it? Yeah. So
it is. It's week 1.
It's coming right around the corner, Drew. It's too early to put money down, but first game of the year, usually teams are kind of on their heels. You're going to have a lot of Browns players that it's not that personal to them. This is going to be like Baker Mayfield's Super Bowl here because unless Carolina's a whole lot better than we expect, I don't really see them going a whole lot farther than that. So motivation-wise, you got to check every box in the Carolina side of things.
Yeah. Justin says, Raiders have about 2 to 3 year window. After that, they will be terrible for a while. That's kind of a hard take. I don't know if I can sit there and say that. If Derek Carr moves on, I think it's going to be a setback, but I don't really think to say a while. I mean, they're not getting, well,
they made a lot of moves to bring in veterans, right?
They have made a lot of moves to bring in veterans, but this day and age, in my opinion, you don't necessarily have to have that first round pick. Look at the Rams. When's the last time they've taken someone in the first round?
Jared Goff, if I remember right, was their last first round pick. So it's been 7 or 8 years.
So to say that, I don't know. And you got to remember Vegas, the Raiders, franchise, historic. It brings a lot of veterans, a lot of players there because of that scenario. A lot of people like to play in black and silver. They like that color scheme. I know it sounds ridiculous, but trust me, it matters to these people. I don't know if I can believe that. I just don't know if I can.
I will say this, to Justin's point, a lot of teams are on that 2 to 3 year window where it's like either we hit a lot of guys in the draft or things are going to fall apart. So who knows? Maybe this year the Raiders, under new management and new GM, new head coach, they are able to pull the trigger on some of these draft picks that help them get a lot better because they need an infusion of youth. I will say they have definitely leaned into a lot of their veteran talent, but that's because they've been striking out in the draft. And usually when a team has that happen where you have a bad draft or two, you really have to rely on free agency for a year, and then after that, it's like you're desperate for that young talent to come in and really refresh the team. It can be really hard to keep up if your draft picks aren't hitting. But like you said, Drew, look at the Rams. They've been one of the few success stories of taking a step back from the draft and leaning more into the free agent side of things. So Do more teams copy that? I think they try. Can everybody pull it off? Let's just say not every team's out in LA. You're not going to land every free agent that you want. Richard, man, good to see you. Haven't talked to you in a while, man.
Vegas is just as good, right? I mean,
it's close, but still, I think that LA has a lot more of a pull because there's so many more things to do. And yes, Vegas is fun to go out to, but business opportunity-wise, entertainment-wise, I just think there's going to be a lot more money out there. You're going to be in more commercials in LA. You're going to have, billboards and everything else. It still has a bigger pull, I think, than Vegas by some degree.
Ray, good to see you, man.
Absolutely.
Justin,
go ahead.
Justin, well, let's get a couple more of these Marlon Macks. Nathan goes, I know Marlon Mack was weird, the fact that they cut him. And then Justin says now Rex Burkhead is the backup. He doesn't get it. I think Burkhead still has a little bit left in the tank. I mean, he's not Marlon Mack.
True.
But
yeah,
I don't think it's a bad backup.
If we're talking about Houston and what they're going to do, spoiler alert for when we talk fantasy, watch Dameon Pierce. He was a guy, he's a rookie this year, came out of Florida, third or fourth rounder, don't quote me on that. Guy I really liked coming out of the draft. His big issue was that Florida just like mysteriously didn't give him a lot of touches. He only had like 100 touches or something his last year. But very, very talented, very good at breaking tackles, which is really important for running backs. And he's one of those guys that I'm going to tell you to scoop him in fantasy. Again, this is a spoiler alert for later in the show. Scoop him in fantasy if you haven't done your draft yet. He might even be a free agent. And just hope that he winds up getting more carries in Houston, because I think they're going to wind up being more of a run-heavy team if they're able. They'll be behind in some games, but he can catch too is the other thing. So we'll see. I like Dameon Pierce. We'll see what happens with him. He's kind of a bit of a flyer. I'm not like putting the rubber stamp, like take him, you're winning your fantasy league, and tell him Jake sent you, right? No, don't do that. But keep an eye on him. He's an interesting prospect and an interesting guy that going forward, I think, might have the opportunity to win a starting spot, even if he shares some carries in Houston.
Nathan, he's went off and said, I drafted Derek Carr in my fantasy. He thinks he's going to tear it up this year. I agree.
Don't hate it, but in fantasy, it's hard to not draft guys that really rack up those ground yards too. So I like Derek Carr, and I like where he's at. Love Devontae Adams coming in. Like Darren Waller coming back healthy. I think that'll be interesting. Hunter Renfrow as well. That offense might be pretty explosive, but I do think there's also the running ability that, depending on how your league is set up, it's hard to not have those rushing yards. Like, you really have to outperform people passing. Maybe he does. Maybe Derek Carr's that surprise pick that wins guys fantasy championships this year, but I don't know, Drew, talking about it.
Yeah, but that window is so short in running backs that are quarterbacks that run the ball. You literally got 3, and then you're done. You're done drafting those.
Sure. Well,
you got to pick somebody.
You got Lamar. I think Jalen Hurts is another like sleeper this year. I think again, we're just digging into my list here. Trey Lance is another guy. Kyler Murray. I think Trey Lance should be something you would consider because regardless, it's a Kyle Shanahan offense, and he runs the ball effectively. Like, there's no doubt he can run. We know he can run, and it's Kyle Shanahan. You just got to put some faith in him figuring it out.
You got 12 teams your fantasy league probably. That's 4 quarterbacks who run the ball more than normal. You got to pick some. I
think Josh Allen can fall in there too. He has plenty of rushing ability. I know they're leaning away from that. That's 5.
My bad.
That's 5.
Now it's 5. You still got
Geno Smith, perhaps, probably not, but
no,
perhaps. Yeah.
He will sit.
Matt Stafford? No. I'm out of options here. You might be right. There might only be 5 of them, but still. And Nathan also goes on to say he got Carr with his last pick, which is never bad for a quarterback if you're able to get a guy that talented. Sean, good to see you as well. We'll hit a couple more of these, Drew. A couple more really interesting ones that some people might find interesting. Some people, like if you're me, you'll find them interesting. Some people might be like, Jake, who cares about any of this? Kellen Mond, another guy that not in the league very long, couple years with the Vikings. They're releasing him after being a 3rd-round pick, I believe. Interesting kind of end of the story that never really took off there in Minnesota. Kind of one of those things where it's like, why even bother drafting him in the first place? I know you kind of, like, all you really did was upset Kirk Cousins. And he's still there. He's still on a short contract. You're still paying this man to the moon. But you just saw the Titans do a similar thing with drafting Malik Willis. It's like, why spend this 3rd-round pick on a quarterback when you already have a guy? I don't know. I know there's that game theory of, well, you should just keep taking him. But at one point, it's like, is it worth upsetting your current quarterback to take a 3rd-round pick on a quarterback who's probably never going to start for you? I don't know. The Vikings are now kind of like reaping what they've sown here. How much better could their team have been if they would have spent that 3rd rounder on a different position?
Right. Didn't they also release one of their like edges that they drafted last year too?
If so, he missed my list. I'll look it up real quick while you distract everybody.
No, you're good. Robinson is his name. 4th round of 2021. They're getting rid of, young talent that they took not too long ago in the draft. It's interesting. But of course, this is a new regime in Minnesota, so they're saying, hey, those are not our players. We're going to move on. Let me get to a couple of these. Justin says, what about Dallas just carrying one quarterback?
We were going to talk about that, but let's get into it right now. They're going to sign somebody. I think they have their eye on somebody expected to be cut, and that is likely going to be their backup. They'll probably re-sign, what's the kid's name, that came in and had to play for him last year. They'll re-sign him to the practice squad. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he's that good that I can't remember what his name is. But they'll re-sign their younger quarterback.
I don't know his name.
That's okay. They'll re-sign him to the practice squad because he has free eligibility where he can't be poached because he hasn't played enough, and they will most likely sign somebody else that they already have their eye on. There's no way they go into the season with only one quarterback. There's no way. And Travis says they should go out and get Mon. That might be their pick. I know people have kind of drawn that connection. Personally, I don't think Kellen Mond's very good. He was not a guy I was very high on. A lot of draft experts love telling you the guys they like. I think the real guys that watch the draft are also the guys that put the stamp on guys they don't like coming out, and Kellen Mond was one of those guys that I was like, I just don't see it. At A&M, he had a pretty good stretch with Jimbo Fisher right when he got there, and then his last year was a little disappointing. He was never a guy that had the accuracy or the physical. Like, you take some guys that have so much physical talent that you're like, we'll teach him to throw, and we'll take that chance. He never really had either of those. He was not a super accurate passer, and he was never just an elite rushing freak that you're like, well, if we can teach him to throw, we're winning Super Bowls. So I'm not sure. It's not DiNucci. I'm sorry. It was, let me keep looking for this. Why don't you hit a couple more of these comments while I try to back up my claims?
Sure. Castling, good to see you. He says he made it. Glad to watch the show today. Man, we're glad to have you here. Sean says, do we think Odell Beckham Jr. will join the Buffalo Bills to be teammates with Von Miller? I don't think it's a dire need for the Bills to sign Odell Beckham Jr. I don't think it's something that they're like, hey, we're so short on receivers. Let's go out and get this veteran presence, a personality in the locker room that could mess up a team that has all the potential to go to the Super Bowl this year. I don't see that happening unless there's an injury to like Stephon Diggs. Beyond that, I think Odell Beckham will find another place in the NFL. I don't believe it's going to be the Bills.
I think Odell's going to cherry pick, and I have my answer. But real quick, let me hit this. I think Odell's going to cherry pick because he's coming off that super late torn ACL. It'll probably be October or November before he's ready to go. He's going to go look for a contender, and he's going to just cherry pick whoever is 6-1, 7-2. He's going to come out here and try to steal another Super Bowl. Steal is the wrong word because he will help a team.
Yeah.
But he's going to cherry pick a team that's on their way. I don't think he's going to sign for the next 6 to 8 weeks until he is sure who is going to wind up being out there. Cooper Rush is who I was talking about, and Travis beat me to it. Yeah, Travis, so I appreciate that. Cooper Rush doesn't have to clear waivers.
What did he win?
Our respect, our undying gratitude and respect. He beats me to a lot of these names. Travis is right on top of it. Let me tell you, I get like that foggy COVID brain or whatever you want to call it. We're just getting old, Drew. Can't help it, man. We're getting old.
How dare you not know
Cooper Rush? He played last year. He started last year. I knew who he is. I know who he is, and I could see his face, but the name is like, it's not there, man. Welcome to the Two Crotchety Old Men podcast talking about football. Thank you for joining us. Justin says, obviously the Cowboys will get somebody, but it's weird that you don't keep somebody from your camp. Same deal. I think they looked at Cooper Rush and they watched him play last season. It's a little weird they haven't addressed it until before now, right? You would have think in the offseason, you watched Cooper Rush start last year for, 2 games when it was 1 or 2 games when Dak Prescott was out. You probably knew back then he wasn't ever going to be your true starting quarterback, or like even the emergency, we need you for 4 weeks because Dak is hurt quarterback and we need to float to make the playoffs kind of guy. So it's a little weird to see them not really address it before this point. Kind of feels like a panic kind of overreaction, but
I don't know. They've done it in the past with Andy Dalton and bringing in like a veteran presence there, and maybe that's just not what they want. Maybe it's, hey, let's bring in some young guys. Maybe they didn't like their camp. It is odd. It is very, very odd. But they're I'm sure this isn't the first time in NFL history that all the players minus their starter are like, we just don't like what we have, and we're going to push the reset button. And realistically, Dak should be healthy. Dak should be able to play all year long. So why not bring someone in that could, get a couple of weeks and then learn the system? I mean, these are all professionals. I mean, they're supposed to be able to come in and within 7 days play a game with the team.
Sure. You're right about that. But again, it comes down to what do you really need? And when you're in the spot where the Cowboys are, where it's like we should realistically be chasing a Super Bowl, but we're probably more of a playoff team, maybe not a Super Bowl contender. You need that guy to be your number 2 quarterback that if something happens to Dak, like last year where he missed a couple weeks, they got lucky that their bye week was right after he got hurt against the Patriots. I think it was 2, but it might have just been 1. And they had Cooper Rush come in and play, and it was awful. It was not good. I think they realize that they need to chase somebody that he can come in, and if we run the ball well and we play defense, we're going to win this game 20-17. I just don't think Cooper Rush is that guy, and I think they recognize that. That's why they're going to push him to the practice squad. Will Grier, notable former first-round pick from our 2019 fan mock draft, it probably will be released. And my guess, it'll either be Kellen Mond or you'll see another one of these backup quarterbacks that they're willing to pay a couple $1 million to be that guy that's almost like a relief pitcher. When you need the setup man before the closer comes back to finish a game, I think that's what it's going to be. Travis says, trust him, he's old too. He's 33. Well, your mind's a lot sharper than mine, and I'm right on your heels. Jonathan says he doesn't know anything about this Eagles DB. He hasn't really paid attention to the Saints. I promise you, Jonathan, stick with us. We'll talk about that. We're getting right to it. It's right around the corner. Let me say this, hard hitter, a little bit of a controversial player. The question is going to be, do the Eagles have the money to pay him like they're likely going to have to?
Sean, I'm glad that your Chiefs are your second team, and it's going to be a dogfight when the Bills and Chiefs play this year for sure.
That'll be a lot of fun, man. Can I talk about one more thing before we move on to the trades? I know I talked about Sony Michel and Preston Williams.
You know what, Jake? No, you can't.
Okay, all right. On to the trades then. Since we're out of time. Sony Michel and Preston Williams also cut from the Dolphins. Sony Michel, he seems like too good to be this much of a journeyman, but for whatever reason, teams seem to not really buy into what he brings to the table. I was a little skeptical of him coming out of Georgia. I felt like he was shining because there was such a good running program, but he's done enough in the league for me to be like he's somebody's number 2 running back, right?
Has he fallen into the trap of, I played with the Patriots, I was good there, and now I've gone off to another decent team, and you're actually kind of seeing the true colors of Sony Michel?
It was a little
I'm throwing
weird.
This out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe it. I'm just saying it because we've seen it in the past 100 times.
Mm-hmm. And you might be right. You might be right because look at the fact that he couldn't beat Darrell Henderson out for the Rams, and Darrell Henderson is not a great running back. The fact he couldn't win that job from him or at least compete to share carries says something. Then the Dolphins looked at him as well as a bunch of other veterans, and they said, we'll go with Raheem Mostert instead. We'll be fine. We can just move on and cut him, which, again, kind of weird. Usually you like to have that depth, especially once you've already paid for it, because it's not like cutting him now and taking a little bit of a penalty and freeing up a little bit of cap changes your trajectory. You don't have money to go sign like Odell Beckham if he comes up just because you made this move. So a little weird to see him on his way out and not at least just like stashed on the roster somewhere where you're like, man, he's not getting any carries, but he's also, still on the team and everything else. It's just weird to see the Dolphins kind of wash their hands and say, we're done with it. Preston Williams, another guy that they're like, he's going to be our number 1 receiver of the future. Kind of weird to see him out. Same deal. This guy can't make it as a 5th wide receiver. A little strange. All right. Last thing, then we're talking trades. I promise, Drew. The Browns. Just like we talked about the Cowboys not carrying any backup quarterbacks, that's really weird. Forever, Kevin Stefanski has been the 2 tight end, fullback, running back. We're playing heavy football, and I'm going to find a way to make it work with 2 wide receivers kind of guy. They only have 2 tight ends and 0 fullbacks after the cut day, Drew. Are the Browns, even with a lack of wide receiver talent, in my opinion, are they moving to more of a spread offense now that they've traded for Deshaun Watson? And do they need to, since he's going to spend 11 weeks out?
Do they need to? No. Are they? Yes. I mean, the writing's in the sand, man. You can see it. That's what they're going to do. If it fits your personnel, if it fits your scheme, why not do it? Why not do it?
Well, that's the thing. His scheme forever has been, we're going to put 2 tight ends out on the field, and we're going to run the ball really effectively, and we're going to hit you with a bunch of play action.
I mean,
they just went to an NFC championship 2 years ago. Their quarterback got hurt last year. He took Case Keenum to an NFC championship.
Hold on. Are you talking highly about Baker Mayfield? Don't you do that? You don't. Like
I didn't
Baker
say it was because of him, but I'm just saying they went.
No, I get it, man. It's a change.
I just said he's going to beat the Browns week 1. What are you talking about?
I'm just messing with you, man. It's definitely an interesting change. It is a Deshaun Watson thing. I think that's exactly what it is. They're going to get their offense ready to play for a play style like Deshaun Watson. But like you said, it's 11 weeks till you see him.
Yeah. So
how does that fit in, really?
You're going to go 3 wide receiver, like 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 running back with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, isn't the goal to get to 6-5, and then you have Deshaun Watson come back and you make like that final push and win 4 out of the last 5, you go to the playoffs, right? Is that the guy to do it with, or should you just be running the ball like crazy with like 5 tight ends? Maybe they sign guys, right? Because that's what's going to happen next. They're going to pick guys up off of waivers. They're going to sign a few guys who fall through. It's a weird sort of step for them, especially having let Austin Hooper go after a disappointing campaign with them, to have paid Dave Njoku all that money and then just said we're going to go with basically Dave Njoku and nobody else. So very, very strange. Very strange out of Cleveland. Very big change of pace out there. Potentially could be a much more open passing game. And maybe Stefanski's saying that's the way the NFL is going. I need to embrace the change instead of trying to counterpunch. I just, again, you have these great running backs. Why? One of those things, like 2 and 2 is equaling 5 here, and I'm still struggling with the math problem, Drew.
They'll bring somebody in. Cameron, good to see you. He says spreading Kareem Hunt is a better fantasy option. I don't know if that's what he's worried about. I do want to get this real quick. Eddie, good to see you.
Cameron is right. Yeah. If they're running more spread football, Kareem Hunt will be out there catching it more than Nick Chubb will be.
Absolutely. Eddie, good to see you. He says, what do I think about the Kansas City keeping 5 receivers? And he said also that he's rooting for Josh Gordon to make the roster, but in the back of his mind, he never felt like he really fit in. I'm with you. I was also hoping Josh Gordon was going to stay in there. I know it's been 2 years and you haven't seen a lot of potential out of him, but I also thought that was because of just what we were doing in Kansas City. He didn't have an opportunity to fit in because there was obviously Hill and Robinson and Pringle and then Kelsey. It seemed like it was a long shot for him to make plays, but I thought this year would be the year they had an opportunity to do it. But if you look at it, he didn't even play with the first team in the preseason. So it looked like he was just the guy that was going to be outs there. But I think the reason that we're keeping 5 is because of how well Watson played at wide receiver during the preseason. He seemed to really come out, formerly out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I think it was Justin Watson. I don't want to mess up his name. It is Justin Watson. So, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I like it. I think we have a great 5 wide receiver spread if we wanted to go that route. I like it. I like the moves.
A little interesting to see them not carry more, but especially with their history of them being the passing team, right? I mean, they run when they can, but they throw in whenever you're able to. So
we got Jody Fortson, who is a wide receiver now turned into a tight end, who has played well and can go out there on the outside. And you still obviously got Kelsey, who can literally line up anywhere and be a threat.
Sure.
Realistically, we have 6-7 receivers.
Sure. Again, passing options, whatever you want to call them. But
yeah,
I will say it is a little strange to see someone like Andy Reid, that everyone's like chasing this Chiefs model of like, we can just throw the ball so dynamically, you can't stop us. And then Andy Reid's almost like retreating and being like, no, I want to run the ball more. I want to build this offensive lineup. I want to have a good running game, and then I'm going to have Patrick Mahomes carve you up once you're worried about stopping the run. So a little strange. Everybody's chasing the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are like, no, we're going the other way.
I think you'll be surprised. I really do. I think they'll still throw the ball quite often. I think they'll probably be.
I think they're going to have to, but I agree with you on that. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell to stay up to date with all of our NFL videos as well as everything else we're talking about in sports.
We have a great community on Facebook already, but we're trying to grow our community on YouTube because we believe you guys can talk sports just as well as anybody else, and we can't wait to have those conversations with you.
So grab a drink, hit subscribe, come talk sports with us.